Business advisor here. I am the business advisor here at
No, I'm not turning on my radio unless you want me to.
just a couple of keeping items before we get started. If you could please keep your lines muted. You can jot down your questions. We'll have time for Q&A after the presentation. The session will be recorded, so we'll send that out. We'll send a link out to everyone, so you'll have access to it a little bit later if you want to recap some things. And along with the contact or the information of Mr. Alston. First thing I would like to do is introduce Ms. Bonnie Crockett. She is the Director of Small Business Lending here at Baltimore Community Lending. So I'll give her an opportunity to speak.
Hi, everyone. As David said, I'm Bonnie Crockett. I'm the Director of Small Business Lending at Baltimore Community Lending. Just to give you a quick intro to what we do, Baltimore Community Lending has actually been around for 33 years. And they've made, since that time, they've been making real estate, construction, and development loans for affordable housing and community development. In fact, they were started as an agency of Baltimore City, and then they went out on their own and became a 501c3 nonprofit and a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution, which is a financial institution that is mission-driven as opposed to profit-driven. And then about 4 years ago, they decided to add a small business lending division. So we looked at the primary reasons why people cannot get small business loans, especially in Baltimore. And we built our small business lending program around those barriers to help folks get small business loans. The number one being collateral. Most small business loans from $5,000 and up require 100% collateral. So if you're looking at a loan for $50,000 or $100,000, you basically need to own a house with some substantial equity in it. And that is the primary barrier to small business lending. So we make loans without requiring collateral. We don't have a cutoff credit score. We look at your background and your entire history. Some people have had a bankruptcy or have had a health catastrophe and have reasons why they haven't paid their bills. Other people took a vacation to Mexico instead of paying their mortgage that month. So we kind of look at, who you are and work with you one-on-one and try to get you access to capital. What we do to mitigate risk instead of requiring collateral is that we require all of our applicants to go through a free small business training program. So it's free, it's one-on-one. We meet you where you are. Some folks have a lot of, small business knowledge and can get through basically put together what they need in a couple of weeks. It's result driven. It's not a certain number of hours. We're looking for a business plan and financials that you understand. Make sure you understand rules and regulations that apply to your business. And then other folks, the average is probably 6 to 8 weeks to get everything together, write their business plan. And then we have a few folks that have been working on it for years and are still plugging away. So we meet you where you are, we hold your hand through the process, and that's how we mitigate risk. We've been doing this for 4 years. We've made 66 loans for a total of $4 million right now in the city of Baltimore, and we have had no write-offs at all so far. We believe in Baltimore small businesses, and we think that requiring training as opposed to collateral is not only a more equitable way to make loans, but it also just makes sense because we are helping our borrowers become better business owners. So that's what we do. And I'll just very quickly say we make loans to startups from 10 to 50,000 and up to 150,000 to existing businesses. And then in addition to our one-on-one technical assistance or trusted guidance, as we're trying to sort of change the way people view it, is we like to put on these webinars about quarterly that can help folks with some critical issues for how to run their business. And certainly this is one of them. We all know that hiring employees has actually become more difficult instead of easier, especially through the pandemic. So I think that we're all really looking forward to this today, and can't wait to hear what Mr. Alston has to say.
Thank you, Bonnie. Mr. Alston has over 40 years of experience in human resource industry. He is currently the president and CEO of the Horizon Group. Today, like Bonnie said, he's going to be addressing recruiting, retaining that talent, how to access the talent, and how to hire, basically hiring that talent. So hope you find today's presentation value in that. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Alston.
Thank you very much, David. I trust everyone can hear me. David, if you can, just put a thumbs up. Great. Thank you, Bonnie, for what you're doing for our small businesses here in the Baltimore area. I assume you're focusing primarily in Baltimore, but again, if you're not, if around the Baltimore surrounding area, that's even better. But if you're focusing on Baltimore City itself, that's also great. So again, thank you for what you're doing for small businesses in our Baltimore community.
I will just say we've
Sure.
up until recently, we've only made loans in the city of Baltimore, and we have just expanded our geographic reach to the counties surrounding Baltimore City. So we can help more folks now than we ever did before.
Good, good. Great to hear that. And I look forward to connecting with you because I'm here in Howard County, and also for our staff here, the people that are attending our webinar. I'm also the chair of a business roundtable here in Howard County. And even though we focus primarily in Howard County, we have stretched our business opportunities throughout, like you, the surrounding Baltimore region, covering Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel, Howard, Prince George's, and some parts of Montgomery County. So we're in that same mindset of helping our small women-owned and businesses of color doing the exact same thing that you're doing, trying to make sure that they can get access to capital, that they can also help to scale their business up, whether it's a startup or an existing business. And really, as I mentioned to David a little bit earlier and to our staff here, to our members attending this, is getting them to think like business owners and CEOs of their businesses. So really, this is a very good segue into what I do as a consultant and as a business coach, is to get the business owner to think really strategically and really start thinking like a CEO. So when these opportunities present itself, which it has, this pandemic has shown a lot of what I call inefficiencies and deficiencies in businesses and industries throughout. And for our small businesses now, the challenge that I see from my experience is having that small business being able to pivot in this pandemic, post-pandemic, and really what some of the researchers are saying from CDC, it won't probably be a pandemic, but an endemic that's going to be here for us in the future. So that's part of what I would say to all our business owners that are part of this presentation today, is start beginning to think on a much more strategic level when you're looking at your business in terms of growth. And again, I was mentioning before we got started, thinking about it from a CEO standpoint. And if any of you have seen the World Trade Center in Baltimore, you've seen it. If you've been up at the top floor, that gives you a panoramic view of the city of Baltimore and the surrounding area. And I know, Bonnie, you know what I'm talking about when you're looking at that level and you're seeing the entire city and the surrounding counties. That's where I would say to you folks, what we're talking about today is a process to get you to focus on that type of level as a CEO. And when Bonnie talks about it, or David and Don talk about you having connections to the lending community and all, it's all about relationships. Who do you know and who knows you? So Bonnie, again, to you and to your staff, I commend what you're doing. And I think it serves a very vital part for our business growth, because all of us know small businesses really run America. And small businesses also run the city of Baltimore and around here. And as we all mentioned, the critical need right now, or shall I say through the pandemic, is really now the hiring of people and in a post-pandemic world. So we talked about retention of employees in a post-pandemic environment. And that's the pivot now, because we've gone through 2 years. It started around March the 12th, 13th, and 14th, 2020. And now here we are 2 years later. And I used the comment really prior to March, this meeting would basically be what we held behind in person. Now we've got technology. Some of you are at your business sites. Some of you are probably at another location, but now we can use the aspect of a digital platform, Zoom, Google Meets, Microsoft Teams, or WebEx, to really gather information and do our jobs as well as our businesses in a whole different light. But the critical thing, as I mentioned again, as a human capital consultant, is the recruitment and retention of employees in this world now that's different from where it was 2 years ago. So give you some background. These are the number of openings that the United States has from the Department of Labor. Never in my career have I seen this type of openings, over 10 million job openings that are available here in the United States. I don't know what the statistics are as far as Maryland or in Baltimore, but if my knowledge is correct, hey, it's probably well over several 100,000. People need people. So it's opening up in every aspect, as you see on this screen here, whether it's construction, healthcare, IT, hospitality, you name it, jobs are available. And it becomes very difficult for you as a small business owner now when you're running up against the big boys that are out there, when we look at that environment as far as the job market. What's caused that? Two things, as you probably heard many, many times, people have said: the Great Resignation. People are quitting their jobs, or during this pandemic, they've stayed on, but they reassess what they're doing in their present jobs. And that job has required them to take a different look. And now they're resigning, moving on to another job, or they're starting their own businesses. Some of you probably fit that category. The Great Retirement. People during this pandemic decided, you know what? I've got my 25 years in, my 20 years in, and in some cases, maybe my 30 years or more, and I'm leaving now. This is time to retire. And I've said to clients on the Great Resignation and retirement, they're taking away some critical things in what we call the knowledge and the business acumen, taking away all that institutional knowledge that's going out the door. And we are not, business owners are not prepared for it. What happens when a person resigns? And if he or she has only been with the company for several years, they still take away that knowledge. What happens if they retire and they've been there for 20 plus years? And in the Baltimore market, you and I both know, all of us know, that retiree, when he or she leaves, they take a lot of that knowledge, that nuances, the contacts, and just the social and professional interaction that was critical to your business or any other business that they were in. They take that knowledge with them, so they're gone. So these are the two biggest things that have occurred during the pandemic that we've experienced or are experiencing right now: the Great Resignation and the Great Retirement. As we move forward, wanted to give you some insights that really we're looking at by the end of this year. People are now returning back to work, but now not all of them 100% are saying we're returning back to work. I think, David, you were saying, and Bonnie, that your office is really what we call a hybrid. People are coming back to work, but they're only coming back maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a week. Some of them maybe will go to 4, but they're not coming back maybe to 5. And that 5 coming back in the office, only 30% really saying, hey, I want to come back into the office. 30% of the workforce. 10%, I want to work fully remote, because now that I've got broadband and the internet is very strong, do I really have to be in the office every day? Give you one example, company that I know of, the person who was working for them, they went on fully remote, and they were preparing the department's budget for that end of the year. This was 2020. And historically, when they were preparing the end of the year budget, they were always 4 or 5 days late. When the pandemic hit and they went fully remote, the entire team, that budget that normally was late, they became a week early. They finished the budget for that department 1 week early. And that result of that sent ripple effects throughout the entire corporation, because they had never been early in preparing that budget. They were always late. What did that do? It changed the whole concept. So now let's fast forward 2 years later, they're working fully remote, and the productivity is very, very high. So before we even get into the in-depth of recruitment and retention, realize that you've got a potential talent pool out there that's going to really talk to you about, can I work either a hybrid, fully remote, or if I do come back into the office, I want to negotiate now how that return or being back in the office is going to look. So right now, by the end of 2020, what we're talking about is a free agency concept. First part I really want to talk about too, or share with you, are 5 strategies for recruiting in a post-pandemic world. Because now recruitment now has never been a challenge like it is now. Before, you place an ad in the paper, you call somebody, hey, I got a job opening, come on over, let's interview. Because the unemployment rate was kind of low, kind of high, depending. But hey, I could walk in there because the jobs were there. Well, now guess what? It's a whole different ball game. So you've got to, as a business owner now, look at changing your mindset and developing different strategies of recruiting. First of all, the first strategy is you got to cultivate your culture. Now you would say, I'm a small business, I don't have a culture, but I would say to you, yes, you do. You do have a culture. And your culture is what you set. Are you employee friendly? Are you customer friendly? Whatever the case may be, every organization has a culture. And as I mentioned now, your culture is arguably the #1 element that potential hires are looking for. When I say culture as far as, do we have a hybrid? Are you looking for ways to make that person stay with your company? Are you committed now to having a team that's committed to your vision and mission? What's your commitment to your vision and your mission? What are you there to do? And this is not really a mission just for nonprofits or government. Every organization has a vision or a mission to provide what? The best quality service. If you're in hospitality, if you're in holistic medicine and all, whatever the field is, what's the vision and mission that you want to have permeate throughout your entire company, your organization? So you really start looking at now, evaluating what your culture is. Is this a good place to work? And if it is, why? Why is this a good place to work? What have you done to create a culture that people will say, you know what? I like working for XYZ company, and here's why. The owner is, and you can fill in the blank, or the people that's part of the team, they are, fill in the blank. So I would tell you right now, folks, please reevaluate your culture. Determine what that culture is. And don't ever think because you're a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 person organization that you don't have a culture. Yes, you do. Everyone does. Everyone does. And people buy into that or buy out of that based on you. If you're the owner, again, as I stated earlier, you set the tone. You're the leader. You're the employer. And people will follow you or not. And nowadays, they have choices. They have a lot of choices out there. So number one in our strategy, please cultivate your culture. The second strategy, you may want to allow people to work remotely if you can, or a staggered shift. So think about if your company or your organization, your business will allow people to go on a remote, as we mentioned earlier, that's where people are shifting, wanting to work remote or wanting to work on a hybrid, couple days in, couple days out, 3 days in, 2 days out. And let me share with you too, what's happening now out in California from a global standpoint. There's talk, companies out in California are moving toward considering a 32-hour work week. That's on the horizon, a 32-hour work week. It may take some years to get here on the East Coast, but I can tell you in my line of work, we study what's happening out there in California, because I always say California is the R&D as it relates to workplace work. When you think about going in the past, casual work week, casual Fridays, that started out in California. It took a couple of years to get to the East Coast, but it's now casual. Hey, we've got casual days all through the days now. So I'm just sharing with you, thinking out of that, 32 hours, because they want to look at it from a hybrid. The other 8 hours, you're home, because productivity has increased and they're now saying, hey, let's give a little bit of work-life balance. So again, going back to allow remote work, you do the evaluation and to see how can you or could you allow your people to work remotely, because the companies out there now are doing that. I've got a laptop, I've got a computer at home, I can work from home doing some of the menial tasks and not have to worry about the interruptions of working in an office again. So take a look. You may not be able to do that now. I understand that, but maybe you want to allow 1 or 2 people in terms of creating that culture to allow them to work remotely from work, from work at the office. So again, number 2, allow remote work. Third strategy in here, considering adding a list to employee benefits. People now want more benefits now. And we're not just talking about time off, we're talking about healthcare, we're talking about parental leave, more health benefits across the board. So really, if you haven't looked at your benefit packages, or if you don't have one, that's what they're looking at. It's not money anymore. It's not just the salary or what I'm getting paid. It's the benefits that you will offer to that market. That's a recruitment tool as well as a retention tool. What about the benefits that you offer? Companies, if you've got people who want childcare because they found that working remote, this is something they want to keep. So they're evaluating now that job market, and they want now, let's see what the benefits are going to be. There's mental health benefits now. People want more well-being and financial security in that. So again, consider adding to your list of benefits. And if you don't have any, think about it. It could be, if you're for profit, it could be a 401k program. If you're a nonprofit, it could be a 403b program. Again, thinking about your benefits that you offer: dental care, health care, vision, parental leave, just giving you, again, examples. So the third strategy is, again, looking at your list and consider down the road, should we add any additional benefits? Flex time, job sharing, all those things are part of that benefit package. So that's number 3. Number 4, encourage diversity in your hiring. What I mean by that, that's the trend out there, diversity, not just on ethnicity, but looking at that person now that has maybe some physical disabilities. I'm also looking at it from encouraging diversity and inclusion. I didn't share with you before, but I encourage a lot of my clients in terms of talent acquisition to look at returning citizens. In the past, we used to call them ex-offenders. Now we've evolved in calling them returning citizens. And there are people set up to hire those returning citizens. That's part of your diversity. Most people would talk about diversity in terms of race and ethnicity. No, we're looking at physical disabilities. I've seen companies, and we encourage companies to hire people with autism, for an example, that they never would think about in the past, or people that, as I mentioned earlier, returning citizens. So look at your diversity outside of the traditional ways of recruiting in the past. So include and move forward to include that diversity in your hiring. Again, like I said, I'm a strong proponent of returning citizens. The state of Maryland, the Department of Labor and Licensing for the state of Maryland has a very strong returning citizens program that they're teaching people who are incarcerated right now the job skills, the training. There's several colleges that are offering college degrees while they're there. And we found that once that person gets out and he or she is hired in a particular company, the retention rate is absolutely phenomenal. We've seen it as high as 80 to 90%. And again, I'm a proponent of it because several years, maybe years ago, I was on the Governor's Commission on Ex-Offender Employment, where we wanted to have businesses to look at that returning citizen and offer him or her opportunities that they normally would not get in the traditional market. So again, I encourage you to look at diversity outside of the traditional ways that most diversity are looking at, not just the ethnicity, as I mentioned earlier, but including now disabilities as well as people who are returning citizens there. So really, I see down here, does Baltimore incentivize business owners to hire returning citizens? I don't know for sure. I know the state does. And that's something that you probably want to check with the Baltimore, your labor, and see. I know the state does have those type of programs. We encourage that. So check with the Baltimore, your labor department there in Baltimore, but I know the state, the Maryland Department of Labor does that. So hopefully I've answered your question as you popped it in the chat. Great, thank you. No problem. So again, think about that. And it also encourages, I can't stress this enough, they have a higher employee retention. So encourage that diversity. Number 5, perfect your video interviewing process. This is a trend, folks, that people are going toward. Video conferencing, video interviews. The old way, well, I got to see them, I got to touch them and feel them. If you've got remote hiring, that person could live, and I've got clients that have got employees in Atlanta. They've got them here in Maryland, and all it is a video interview. They verify the skill set and all and try it, but think about how is my interviewing process set up. If you require face-to-face, I understand that. But if you don't, and that person wants to work remotely, then a video interview will probably be sufficient. So these are things that you may not have thought about in the past, but it's also part of your retention and also your recruitment. Look at that person. AARP, for an example, are listing now jobs for seniors that are working remotely, where you can work from home and do the job. Call centers now are proliferating because of people can work from home. So think about that. Perfect your interviewing process when you look at a potential strategy as you go forward. So these are strategies somewhat, as I would call that, are thinking outside of the box, non-traditional, so to speak, in this post-pandemic world. So again, going back to my steps now. Step one, develop the process. A formal plan for your entire hiring team. If you're a small business, you want to really have a very clear process of how you interview your candidates, whether it's going to be for a hybrid, remote, or back in the office. And you may want to discuss these steps that the candidates will be required to complete ahead of the interview. So you need to tackle how that interview will change now that the hiring is going to be done possibly remotely. So review, and before we even go into the other steps, review your entire interviewing process now in this post-pandemic world. Make sure that is a formal plan that everyone on your hiring team, whether it's yourself as the manager or an assistant manager, whomever is involved in that process, formalize that now. So everyone will know what you're talking about and how you will conduct that interview. Step number two, excellent and consistent questions. And these are just some questions in there. How would you describe yourself in 5 words or less? I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I was interviewed by a company in Louisville, Kentucky, and the director of employment asked me this one question. He said, Mr. Alston, if you had to describe yourself in 1 word, what would it be? And I didn't hesitate. I said, confident. And stop right there. From that position, that answer, along with the other answers, I got offered a position. Number 2, can you describe a situation which you've gone above and beyond? Another good question. And how will you contribute to the team? What do you bring to the team? Together, everyone achieves more. So these are some good questions in there that gives you the person idea of, hey, I'm a team player. How will I contribute to the team? And how have I gone above and beyond? Give me an example situation, because you want to see if that person is going to be a person that's going to be with you, not for the short term, but the long term. And that's also, if they're committed to your vision and your mission, they're going to give you not 10%, but 110%. And that's what you want them to describe a situation that has occurred in the past. So number 2, ask excellent and consistent questions. And I can't stress enough consistent questions. You write them down, you can have a list, but everyone's going to be in concert as to what those questions are going to be on a consistent basis. Number 3, well, let me back up. Yeah, every industry is hiring. I definitely wanted to go back to that. And I just put this in here. Every industry. I put down plumbers, electricians, HVAC people, everyone's hiring. As I scroll down, hospitality, hotels, restaurants, they're hiring. Teachers. I think I saw some numbers out here that America will need over 100,000 teachers in the next 10 years. The airline and travel industry, pilots, flight attendants, customer service reps, you name it. They're out there. They need them. The Postal Service. I'm near a Postal Service building that has been built, and completed, but it's been vacant for the last 8 months. And the reason being, cannot find enough people. They can't staff it. Here's some competition in the trucking industry. We now saw where Walmart, and everybody knows Walmart. Walmart now needs so many truck drivers. They're willing to ask their associates, if you will agree to be part of a class, they'll teach you how to drive a truck, help you to get your CDL license, and they will start you off, if you're going to do long hauling, well over $80,000 a year, because they need people. The supply chain is critical. So everyone is hiring out there. So what I've just stated in the past in terms of the strategies, and what I've said in terms of hiring and all, these types of industries, and I'm not even listing all of them that are out there. The IRS needs about 10,000 people since it's tax season. The federal government needs people. The state of Maryland has openings. So you got competition out there, folks, for that quality of talent. So we've got to be far more aggressive and far more open-minded to the people that we really want to hire on our teams. And I mentioned this term, hybrid hiring. Again, I can't stress it enough. You see where these folks are. Many of you are probably in the same environment, working at home in the kitchen, working at your desk, maybe at work or at another location, or you're right outside of your house or building, whatever the case may be, called hybrid hiring. That's what's happening. Okay. These are what I
Excuse
would
me, 1 second.
call,
Please mute your phones. Thanks.
okay, thank you, David. These are the best, what I call the best job posting sites of 2022. Everyone knows ZipRecruiter. Yep. And you've seen the commercial. My business manager has left, so I indeed need another person. Indeed, you do. Yes, indeed. Flex Jobs, Monster, LinkedIn, and another one that probably you haven't heard too much of, Search Simplify. But all of these are just some of the job posting sites that are out there. So this is your competition. And this is only a skim or tip of the iceberg. But if you're looking at positions like that, I recommend, take a look at all of these and see whether or not they're, again, comparable to what you're looking for in terms of the candidates. But they're out there. Potential recruiting sources, I wanted to put that out there also. What's here in Maryland? Returning citizens. The Department of Labor and Licensing had workforce development people out there. The Maryland Department of Safety and Correctional Services are looking for, this is under also their organization, and they work very closely with the Department of Labor for returning citizens. Progress Maryland. Veterans, please, if I can't stress anymore, take a look at our veteran community. Because there are organizations out here. I have a client here in Howard County that's looking for job opportunities for veterans. So again, it's part of that overall diversity and inclusion. So please, returning citizens and our veterans that are returning, they need jobs. And then also ARP, Real Possibilities, as I mentioned earlier, they have a very strong job board for people that are over 50 and over 60 that want to work maybe part-time or work remotely again. So these are just some of those sources out there. And again, last but not least, the Department of Labor, they have, again, workforce development people who are out there sourcing jobs and also have candidates that they can refer to you. So these are some of the potential job sources out here for you that will help you to recruit and in a lot of cases retain that particular person going forward. So, okay, we talked about getting them into the door, the recruitment. How do you potentially keep them? And let me say this before I go any further. Do not think that you're going to keep that person on your job for 5 or 10 years. That's not happening anymore. They know coming in that they're free agents. And you also have to think about, folks, you've got 4 to 5 generations in the workforce now. So you've got Gen Z, millennials, Gen Y, baby boomers, and all. So you've got 5 generations, possibly 4 to 5 generations in the workforce. So each of their retention strategies are going to be different. That millennial, he or she is free agents. They're going to move quickly, moving up there. So that's what we're talking about in terms of that, making the opportunities available for them to get in the job. So think about retention lasting. If you can keep them 3 years, you're good. You're good. In this post-pandemic environment, if you can keep them 3 years, because we're saying to, on the flip side, to that applicant, and I do a lot of training with that applicant, you got to think now free agency. Have skills, will travel. So I'm going to move around. So it puts a lot of emphasis now on how can I keep that person for a period of time, and understand turnover is going to be a constant thing in your culture. People will come in, get the training, get the knowledge, and leave. So you as owners and managers always think about a continuous workforce change. What you want to do is try to reduce the frequency and increase the time that they stay. But the idea of a 20-year employee, a 30-year employee staying with your company, with this new generation of workforce coming in, that's a thing of the past. So please understand that before we go into retention, that you're always going to be in a continuous recruitment and retention mode. Every year you should evaluate your recruitment strategies, and also every year or every 6 months, you should be evaluating your retention strategies to retain them. Okay. Hopefully you can see this. When we start looking at now culture, I say show up, show the empathy, and include everyone in the back to office conversation. Show up and show empathy. This is part of your culture again. Being also speaking transparency about what our new work norms are going to be. So when I'm coming back, be empathetic to your employees and include everyone into the back to office conversation. If I'm coming back to your office full time and no remote, I've got to include everybody in there. But understand that person has got to have, you've got to show some empathy to that person now, because those 2 years that they've been away on this pandemic, their needs have changed. So you've got to be very empathetic and sympathetic. A lot of stress has occurred. We're seeing a lot more mental health issues coming in there. So you've got to be very empathetic in doing that. When we say speak, being very open and transparent about your work norms. What are they going to be now in this post-pandemic world? That's what you've got to share with that. B, be very clear how your organization will balance the hub, the remote, or the hybrid work. Be very clear how that's going to be communicated to your particular employees, whether it's going to be back to work, remote, or hybrid. You decide and be very clear on how you express that to the person. I always say this, err on the side of over communication about return to work plans and policies. In the past, we would say, well, I'm going to keep it to the close to the vest. They don't need to know. No, over communicate. over communicate. The more open and transparent and more open communications you have, that increases the retention, because they can say, hey, my manager, my supervisor, my coworkers are very open and clear, and they over communicate going forward. Stay adaptable to the vaccination and case conditions will continue to evolve. This something is still in a state of flux. We just heard about the mask mandates coming off, going back on, whatever. Hey, stay adaptable. Stay abreast to what your local health department are saying in terms of how this vaccination, the case conditions. Some people don't want to get vaccinated, some will. This is something you've got to stay adaptable and be on a continuous change, because these conditions will evolve. Continue the cultural practices during any particular lockdown periods. That may occur again. We're seeing a little bit of an increase in Philadelphia. Maryland is seeing an increase now of their COVID cases. So continue with the cultural practices maybe. It may work, it may not, but just at least consider that. In this post-pandemic world, we may end up getting back into, who knows, a lockdown period. Involve your employees directly in rebuilding your company's culture. You've got to do that. The more you do that, the better it is. So again, look out there. And last but not least, plan, 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 and plan. So as we close, some takeaways. Number one, the job market is wide, 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 wide open. You as an employer, you must expand your recruitment resources. You've got to expand it. Takeaway number three, the candidate now has more choices than they've ever had in the work world. 4, the employee wants a work-life balance. That's what they want now. It's not, I want to work all this overtime, I want to get stressed out. No, I want a work-life balance. Number 5, the culture of your company must change. It must adapt to this post-pandemic, also to this digital world. I can do the job, maybe working remote. I don't have to be in the office anymore. So the culture of your company has to change. Or if it was my way or the highway, guess what? They're taking the highway then, if that's the attitude. So the culture must change. What you're seeing too, the employee wants more input. They want more input on how the job is done, how it can be improved. So again, if you haven't done this and you've got a group of employees, ask for their input. How can we do it better? They're doing it, so you want to involve them. Increase employee benefits. We talked about that. Look at your benefit package right now and ask your employees, when we talk about more input, what are some of the things that you think we should have in our employee benefit package? Involve them, because if you involve them, hey, then that retention level will increase. They also, the culture of your company, because, hey, this is a company that values feedback, employee feedback. It all trickles in or falls into place. So look at your employee benefits. Diversity and inclusion will be the new norm, folks. As I mentioned earlier, it's not just somebody that we're hiring them because of the same race, the same sex. No, we're looking at it now in terms of the disabilities, that they can be very valuable in here. We're looking at veterans. So look at your diversity and inclusion program and expand that to include a variety, what I call a mosaic of the workforce that's out there. That'll be the new norm. And I say, don't expect the new employee to stay to retirement. The new generations that are coming into work right now are not looking for what? A retirement 20, 30 years from now. They're going to be changing jobs quite frequently. And number 10, employers, in my opinion, must be willing to adapt to a new, ever-changing work environment. It's changing all the time. When we look at the supply chains and the number of jobs out there, and I've said to you earlier, this is people now are free agents, using a term of sports. They can pick and choose. And if it doesn't match to what they're looking for, then they're going to move on. So these are the 10 takeaways that I'm sharing with you now that I think you need to really start thinking about. And I can't stress enough that all 10 of these are something that needs to be a conversation with you on an ongoing basis. That if you're in that vacuum of thinking I can do this by myself, or I can only do it with maybe a small group of people, you got to expand from that. The market is wide open. You've got to start thinking, as I said earlier, at that 30,000 feet level, at that World Trade Center in Baltimore level. And when you look at that landscape around there, just look at it, it's changing, and it's changing every day. The technology is forcing us to change. The people that you're hiring now, I've gotten comfortable with the technology, with the idea that the market is wide open, that I've got more choices now than I ever had in the past. That when I mention everyone is hiring, you name it, if it's retail, Target, Walmart, or you name it, stores in there. If it's the government, state, local government, Baltimore City now, we talked about the police department wants to hire civilian people and they put money in there. So everyone is hiring, everyone has choices. So you as an employer have now got to really look outside of the box, expand that level of recruitment resources, be open for that candidate now coming in and asking a lot more questions in terms of their benefit package in there, not just what you're paying, but what you're offering them in terms of remote work options, the benefit package, and understand, as I said, again, that they're going to be there, many of them, to acquire the knowledge and the skills. And after maybe 2 to 3 years, they're going to be moving on to something even higher or meets their goals in terms of what they're expecting in terms of their life. So again, I'll emphasize number 10. We've got to adapt to an ever-changing. So the most consistent thing that's out there now as an employer is consistent change. It's going to change next year and the years after that when we look at that supply chain going forward. So these are the 10 takeaways we talked about. So again, thank you very much on that. I'm going to answer some questions and really doing my commercial out here. I always say we put a people plan to your business plan. This is what I do as a consultant, trying to help businesses grow and move to the next level. So Bonnie, David, thank you very much in terms of allowing me to share with you and your audience recruitment and retention strategies. I'll look in the chat and see if there's any questions out there. I see one, are there any programs, local, regional, state, that are currently available to assist small hiring and businesses in hiring costs, background checks, and drug tests? Yes, they are. And I can give, if you give me you got my name and phone number out there, I can give you some companies that are doing that, that are doing the drug testing. If it's required by DOT, Department of Transportation, they usually require drug testing, and also background checks. Yeah, I know the background checks are now coming to the highlight on a humorous but not so humorous, when Baltimore City Police can now fire a person who was a civilian and they didn't do a background check. So yeah, there are companies out there that are doing background checks. Yes. Any other questions?
Yeah, there was one a little bit higher. I'll read
Okay.
that one out for you.
Please.
Different benefits that we should consider for part-time versus full-time staff. Like to offer health insurance. Is that only a benefit for someone that is working more than 30 hours?
Right now, that's up to the employer. to answer that question in there, that's up to the employer, because yeah, people want to pay that, and also up to the company. When we talk about benefits, health benefits, it's a list. Do I want long-term disability, short-term disability? Do I want a dental package? Do I want a vision package? So when you start looking at that from a holistic standpoint, take a look at to what you want to offer. There are companies out there that are offering benefits for part-time employees. But now understanding, when you get that, you've got to look at the benefit provider and seeing what the cost is, and also what cost you as the employer are going to incur. So it's not just a one shop stops all, David, and that person's asking that question. It's there, but you also want to look at what you want to offer as a incentive to retain that part-time or that full-time employer. And I so wanted to say, can I get some clarity on Maryland Saves Act? ADP, our payroll processor, is saying we need to start providing a simple IRA with a match. I do not know what A is doing a sales pitch, or is this a requirement for the state of Maryland? It's not a requirement for the state of Maryland. No, I do know that. But at the same time, it could be a sales pitch out there for ADP, and I'm not taking anything from them. But at the same time, you want to look at a overall, and that's when we talk about an IRA, now you're getting into what we call the financial health and retirement plans. And that's a whole different arena out there. I would say shop. I'm not pushing ADP. I'm not pushing any others out there, but shop really as a business owner, just shop, because your payroll processor out there, ADP is fine, but that's a big boy. I've got payroll processors out there that are a lot smaller, that are right here in Maryland. Actually, one, if I can get a plug, they're right in Towson, that are doing a very good job, that can compete with ADP, because they're a small business like you, and that's what their niche is. So again, if you want that information, that particular client, if you want, you've got my phone number, and I'll be more than happy to share that information with you, who that other payroll provider, because as an employer, please shop out there, because ADP, and again, I'm not knocking them, please don't say that, but they're not the only shop in town. That's what I'm going to say. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Well, if I can say again, all of these things, when we talk about people, that's the critical thing that we're looking at, is really making sure that you've got the right people in the jobs. Because David, Bonnie, I can't stress it enough, for companies to grow, they've got to have the right talent. And you can have the best company in the world, but if you don't have the right talent, then that could either make you or break you. You've got, and I would say, usually in the HR field, we always say slow to hire, quick to fire. Take your time in hiring the right person, but also understand, do an inventory of your business, your culture, the type of person that you feel is going to contribute to your company, and create the culture that he or she can also go out there and be a good recruiting tool for you. Companies are giving employees referrals, money for employee referrals. If you got a great candidate and he or she is working for you, guess what? They can hire another person that looks like them, that is in that same ballpark. And again, expand. I can't stress 3 components to take a very critical look at. 1, veterans. 2, returning citizens, and people with disabilities. And I'm not just talking about physical disabilities. Also look at autism. There are opportunities out there. So expand your mindset to people that traditionally you wouldn't look at in the past. Take a very critical look at them now in the future. because they will do a very good job. And those 3 categories of people that I mentioned, their retention levels are much higher than the general public. Once they get there, they stay a lot longer. Those stats are there. So I hope I've highlighted those 3. I'm very passionate about those 3 recruiting sources, our veterans, returning citizens, and particularly people with autism, because people, they have a high level of comprehension, and we really, once you get to know them, and I've got several clients that have hired people with autism, and they've done absolutely fantastic jobs. And again, the retention rates are extremely high. They stay because they know they're loyal to the company and loyal to the person. So forgive me if I got a little passionate about it, but I am.
Mr. Alston, I would like to thank you for the presentation today. Outstanding. I think you provided a lot of valuable information that these small business owners can take back to their businesses and employees. So hopefully everybody feels the same, and we can close this out. Bonnie, did you have any words?
I would just like to thank you as well. Passion is contagious, so that's a good one. Thank
Oh
you
yes,
very
love
much.
what I do.
Actually, so do we.
Very good.
Well, again, David, thank you very much. Thank you, Bonnie. And also thank you to Don, because Don was the first person that connected you two to me. So Don, I know you're there. Again, thank you so much for also the referral. I appreciate it dearly.
Hey, thank you, Nat.
Thank you, Don.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And Melissa, thank you for the future link.
You're welcome. I'll be sending it out probably tomorrow.
All righty. Thank you so much too.
All right.
Thank you all.
All right.
Bye,
Have a good day,
everyone.
everyone.
Have a good day.